Once Upon a Time in America is a film that came out in 1984 and is written and directed by Sergio Leone. So Once Upon a Time in America is a $50 Patreon request from a new $50 patron that goes by the name of Mitchie. He's an Australian. He is the first Australian friend I've ever made in my entire life. First Australian I've ever actually talked to vocally. And I am truly honored to be able to have somebody on the complete opposite side of the world that is willing to give me money to review any film that he wants. So I'm absolutely grateful for this guy. Really wholesome guy, by the way. He's not able to come on Discord as much as usual because he's, again, on a completely different time zone, so he's not there as often, but when he's there, I love every minute of his time. But either way, Once Upon a Time in America is a film that I was highly looking forward to because I haven't really dived into Sergio Leone's films all that much. Really not at all. The only Sergio Leone film I've seen before this was The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and I have a review for that as well if you want to check that out. But that's a film that I basically thought was a masterpiece. And another reason I was really interested in this film is because of the fact that this isn't a Western. Sergio Leone is obviously mostly known and incredibly popular for what he brought to the table when it comes to the Western genre, and just how influential he is when it comes to that arena. So to see him tackle something that's more of a mobster film is really going to draw me towards the film, and is going to really pique my interest. So, after watching Once Upon a Time in America, which, by the way, I watched the 4-hour cut. It's a really long film. After watching this cut of the film, I thought it was a pretty great film. And honestly, there are many moments in this film that were honestly so masterful that it gave me chills. There are aspects of this film that totally represent what I consider to be just like peak filmmaking. Because you can tell that it's handled with finesse. From somebody who obviously knows the art incredibly well. But before I dive into all of that, which I'm incredibly excited to do, we have to talk about the tragic history of this film in terms of its initial release in America. Because this film, apparently like the first cut of this film was actually like 6 to 8 hours long, or I believe even longer than that. And obviously that wasn't going to fly with producers or anything. So they had cut it down to around 4 hours. And then eventually Sergio Leone settled for a 3 hour and 50-minute cut. And still, American producers, the American top 1%ers, they weren't going to have a theatrical release that was nearing 4 hours long either. So what they did was basically butcher the shit out of this film into a 2-hour cut that got pretty much panned by critics. Not that many people really liked this film when it came out in theaters initially. And, it wasn't until years and years later where, the actual Sergio Leone cut that was, again, 3 hours and 50 minutes long was, accessible to audiences and everybody who really wanted to see it. That's when this film actually started getting all the praise that it truly deserved. And I'm glad that, someone like me is able to live to see the day of this film getting, the proper release, from the filmmaker who poured his heart and soul into a film, can at least witness the final product from a true artist. And it's really, really sad, though. Like, even though I'm grateful for it, it's incredibly tragic because of its horrible release, this film is incredibly underappreciated and overlooked. Like, if you ask, any average person what their favorite gangster film is, or their favorite, mobster film is, or crime film, this, like, never gets brought up. Like, this is a film that's actually kind of buried. Only maybe, like, now people seem to know about it and talk about it. But this is incredibly brushed under the rug. Especially when you have other films like The Godfather and Goodfellas and, other really legendary mobster-type films that, obviously are straight up masterpieces, so I'm not dogging them there. I love those films to death. But it just sucks that a film like this kind of lives in its shadow because of the fact that, producers didn't give a shit about vision and all they saw was dollar signs and they wanted to release a film that they thought, audiences would pay up for. And it really backfired because it kind of flopped in the box office because a lot of people didn't really like this film. The version that people saw years later that people actually liked was 3 hours and 50 minutes. But you gotta imagine, that's basically 2 hours of a film that just got completely cut in its theatrical release. And I can only imagine the product that people experienced was really underwhelming because after watching the 4 hour and 19-minute cut, everything seems incredibly purposeful. Like, I can only think of a few things here and there, like a few minutes worth of footage that, I guess I could do without. But, especially with the 3 hour and 50 cut, like, I can't imagine cutting anything out of the film because everything seems so incredibly important and substantive to this film's, not only their characters, but also to the story and the kind of thematic conveyance that Sergio Leone wanted to express here with this film. And honestly, this film, if I had to compare it to anything, reminded me a lot of a combination of The Godfather Part 2 and the most recent Martin Scorsese film, The Irishman. And I know that's like a huge gap in the, mobster crime genre, but it reminded me of The Irishman in the sense that you kind of follow this main character through like huge leaps of time, and it's a film that again is really long, like The Irishman. It really takes its time to build, its context with the characters and the story to really tell something that is quite compelling. And then it reminds me of The Godfather Part 2 because of how this film utilizes flashbacks. And also what I heard was that Sergio Leone turned down an opportunity to direct The Godfather. And I'm not sure if that's 100% confirmed, but if that's the case, I can only assume that Sergio Leone probably regrets it a little bit, and he perhaps wanted to make a film that kind of seized more of that opportunity and make up for an opportunity that he lost. Again, I'm not sure, I'm kind of speculating here, but that's from the information, that's what I'm assuming. But yeah, going back to my initial thoughts of this film, as I mentioned earlier, there are many moments in this film that are honestly some of the best scenes that I've ever seen put to film. And it's because of just the vision behind this. Whether it's the score, which by the way, Ennio Morricone, beautiful composition in this film. I really like the score a lot in this film. It's incredibly moving. You can argue that it's maybe a little bit repetitive, and I can see that. But the score, you feel like it hits this sweet level of melancholy throughout this entire film. And I personally really love the score. The way that Leone is able to capture moments through the direction and through the cinematography and through the editing is just stunning stuff. I mean, this film feels incredibly smooth. It's an incredibly fluid film from start to finish, and that's really tough considering that, I watched the 4 hour cut. Everything felt like it just flows like with purpose. And a lot of that is also thanks to just brilliant transitions. There's just one scene in particular where it's like happens in the first act of the film where an older Robert De Niro, who by the way goes by the character named Noodles in this film, an older Noodles, I guess I should say, goes back to his hometown and he looks through this peephole, and basically through this peephole is how the film decides to transition from the older version of his character and go all the way back in time to, his younger version when he was a child, basically, or a teenager, I guess. And the way that it transitions through the peephole with the music and the slow-moving cinematography as we see Jennifer Connelly's character, the younger Deborah, as she's doing this kind of stage dance, I mean, that was incredibly elegant. I mean, that was one of the most smooth and elegant transitions that I've ever seen put to film. And that was like one of the many moments in this film that like truly gave me chills. There's also like another scene that takes place during like, his more of his childhood era where his friend buys this kind of like pastry dessert. And I won't spoil the context of the scene for, those who haven't seen it. But what that scene leads up to and what he does with the dessert pastry, beautifully captured. Again, a combination with the score, the direction, and just the camera work. Just like beautiful vision, beautiful directing, and just stunning execution overall. I mean, I loved that shit. I ate it up. And also huge kudos to all the children actors, by the way. I think they all did an excellent job, especially for the material that they were given. It's not easy to pull off these kinds of characters. Jennifer Connelly in this film, she's not in it much, but I'm gonna be honest, I didn't recognize her. I was watching this film with my partner Jen, and Jen saw her and was like, "Oh my god, that's Jennifer Connelly," and I denied it. I was like, "That's not Jennifer Connelly. Like that looks nothing like her." Sure enough, I looked it up and it was Jennifer Connelly, and I felt like a complete idiot. But I asked my friends in the Discord chat. I sent a picture of her in the film, and I asked them to guess who it was, and they had no idea either. They were baffled that Jen was able to just guess it right off the bat. I don't know. I've come to the conclusion that Jen is just a freak of nature. But yeah, those two scenes, the pastry scene and the transition scene that goes to Jennifer Connelly's character, those are the two scenes that come to mind that I found to be absolutely mesmerizing. But then there's also another scene that happens a bit later in the film that I'll just call it the baby swapping scene. And that's another scene that kind of gave me chills because of just how beautifully executed it was. Maybe this has to do with also me just loving A Clockwork Orange so much. And I say that because they use, one of the famous songs, La Gaza Ladra, that's used in A Clockwork Orange, and they used it here in that scene, and just the vision behind it, the execution, the camera work, the direction, just it all came together in this really awesome way that, like, when I was experiencing it, I was just like, that right there is cinema. But yeah, there are so many great scenes in this film. And, I'm happy that I watched a 4-hour cut, but what's so interesting about the 4-hour cut is that, like, at the very beginning of the film, there's like this really long paragraph that basically is implying that the lost pieces they were able to find in order to make this this extended director's cut happen, it was hard to really restore it in the same quality as the rest of the film. So it's really obvious when you see the missing scenes that they added into this film, into this cut, because, like, the quality just dips horribly. But obviously, it didn't bother me at all. The fact that they were even able to make this happen, I just feel truly grateful. But here's a really important thing about the film that I have not touched on yet. This is a film that's actually incredibly brutal and probably the most cold-blooded gangster film that I've ever seen. There's multiple rape scenes in this film. One in particular that has to do with Robert De Niro's character that was really hard to watch, and it goes on for a very long time, but it's actually, like, crucial to the film. Like, it's so incredibly important for his character because it just contributes so much behind the importance of his character, in regard to the themes of just regret, especially regret, but also, like, representing that kind of mob mentality to where, when you expect to get something but you don't get it, you just feel entitled to it because you feel like you own the world. But yeah, my point is, this film is really unfiltered. This film, I'd say, again, like, in terms of content, like, it doesn't even, like, compare to The Godfather or even, like, a film like Scarface, because, yeah, there's a lot of violence in Scarface, but there's more disturbing shit in this film than there is in Scarface. Same with The Irishman. Irishman's pretty tame film, but this one actually, like, is completely, like, unchained. It just goes all the way with what it wants to do and doesn't shy away from, trying to depict reality. And honestly, I love that about this film. It's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. You can watch a film like Goodfellas, or you can watch a film like The Godfather or The Irishman with your dad. This one, you might want to think twice before doing it because it's just that much more boundary pushing than those films. But again, I kind of really like that about the film because that's one of the many things about it that I think separates it from those films. Now, obviously, this kind of goes without saying, but, the acting from all the main actors in this film, I thought was really great. Robert De Niro, he doesn't give that crazy of, like, a showy performance, but the emotions are there, and he does a great job with this more subdued type of character. But, when he really needs to go there, he really does, and you feel every ounce of it. And, obviously, I don't need to sit here and praise Robert De Niro. Everybody knows he's going to give a great performance in this film. But James Woods, I haven't seen James Woods in a lot of stuff. The last film I think I saw him in was Videodrome. But he's excellent in this film. I really, really dug his performance and also loved his character. Joe Pesci is in this film too. And he's great when he's in it, but he's not really in it that much. And I guess that was a little underwhelming because it's like a 4-hour film and I thought I would be seeing more of his character, play a more prominent role in this film, but it's not the case. And I know that I've been gushing over this film like crazy, but know that I do not think that this film was flawless. Especially like in the third act, I feel like it starts to lose some steam. And it does kind of hit a point where not only do I want the film to wrap up a little bit, but some of the execution wasn't as fantastic as it was in the first 2 acts of the film. Like for example, in the third act, two of the main characters kind of meet up again after so many years. And their interaction overall was fine. I really enjoyed, what that built up to. But then there's kind of this callback montage scene where, the score starts playing and then you get like this montage of their childhood. And, I really don't like when films do that because I saw that already. We saw the film. We don't need it to call back to something to really emphasize it. I would have got it just well with the score because the score is associated with a lot of those moments in the film. So perhaps if you just had the score, I would be able to, call back to that myself with my own imagination. And that would have been, more than enough substance to really hold the scene and make it effective. And also the ending to this film is, I definitely like it, but I don't know how much I really like it. It's definitely interpretive and it's definitely meant to be a bit ambiguous. And I have heard some interpretive theories that, at first I thought, oh, that's kind of cheap and I don't know if that's really what he was going for. But then the more you think about it, I'm like, maybe that is kind of true. One of it has to do with Robert De Niro dreaming. And, I think after thinking a lot about it, that could be plausible and would kind of make some sense here and there. Not only does it make sense for his character, but would just make more sense in the story. But, hate it or love it, it's still a really interesting way to end the film. And I do like films that go for something that's a bit more interpretive and don't just wrap things in neat little bows. So I'll definitely give it points there. But obviously this is a film that, from watching this entire review, that I really, really enjoyed and appreciate and admire on a pretty high level. Because as I said, there are aspects of this film that I think is just like peak filmmaking. It represents everything that I truly love about the art of filmmaking. And again, had moments where it kind of gave me goosebumps of just how effective it was and how well executed it was. So I'm going to give Once Upon a Time in America a soft 9 out of 10. When I first came away from this film, I thought like, this is probably going to be a solid 8 or at most a strong 8. But the more I think about it, and the more I talk about it, and the more I discuss this with people, it just, I don't know, this is a film that I think deserves, at the very least, a soft 9. And who knows, it could even go up on a second viewing, but this is a film that I definitely think is underappreciated in a lot of ways. And unfortunately, due to a horrendous and tragic release history, it's not remembered amongst all the great mobster flicks, when in my opinion, it definitely should. But either way, that's my review of Once Upon a Time in America. If you really enjoyed what I had to say about the film, please give it a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.